Hey, everybody. We have a very special week for you. Our friend, Pastor Derwin Gray, is going to be with us to talk about how you can live a good life during a pandemic. Pastor Gray is the founding and lead pastor of Transformation Church, one of the fastest growing churches in America. It is a multi-ethnic, multi-generational, mission-shaped community with 3 campuses near North Carolina, where I have had the privilege to speak one of the weekends. It was awesome. Pastor Derwin and his wife, Vicki, been married for 22 years and have 2 children, a daughter, Presley, son, Jeremiah. He is the author of Hero, Unleashing God's Power in a Man's Heart, Limitless Life. You are more than your past when God holds your future, and his new book, The Good Life, what Jesus teaches about finding true happiness, which will be out on June 2nd and is available for pre-order. Derwin is also a former NFL player. He's part of my NFL study, and we fell in love with when Tana made me.
Yes.
She used me.
I did. So there's not a lot of times that I have used you for this, but to meet Dr. Hyman was one, Dr. Perlmutter was one, and Pastor Derwin Gray was the other time. When I heard you speak at Saddleback and your story resonated so strongly with me, Pastor Gray, I just... it moved me and I wanted to meet you. And I thought, well, he's going to have this huge line and he is not going to take the time to meet me, but he will probably meet my husband. So I drug him along and I put him out front. Yes. Well, there has to be some other benefit. So
well,
one of the many.
I have been blessed and encouraged by you guys tremendously. My wife and I have watched many of your episodes on PBS. Always, text Dr. Amon a picture of you guys on PBS and stuff. And so you guys have been incredibly helpful as friends, but also personally. And so I have to make one slight correction in the bio. My wife and I have actually been married for 27 years.
Wow.
And it'll be 28 years on May.
Congratulations.
3rd. Thank you. Yeah. So we feel like adults. You know? So we actually feel like we're growing up.
Not just playing house anymore.
Yeah, it's like our kids are like, man, you guys seem like you know what you're doing now. We're like,
oh, that's so funny.
we're
You've been faking it long enough. You've made it. Yeah.
I'm not sure. We just adopted our 2 nieces, and I'm not sure they would say.
No, I don't think that they've come to that conclusion yet.
So talk about your road, a little bit of your story so people can get to know you and how you've gone really from sports and entertainment to leading a very large flock.
Well, and also, I mean, you've had a life of trauma and you turned your pain into purpose. And that's what I fell in love with. You've had this crazy life. You've had, trauma, and then you went into sports and you had that sort of being celebrated. And then you turned that into all of that into this very purposeful life.
Yeah. When you describe trauma, growing up the way I grew up and growing up the way you grew up as well, trauma was normative, and we normalized trauma that you didn't even I thought it was normal for domestic violence. I thought gunshots were normal. I thought addiction and substance abuse and gang violence, and I thought that was normal. Yep. And so my mom was 16 when she was pregnant with me. My dad was 17. They both struggled with brain health issues. And so my grandmother primarily raised me. She did the best she could. My granddad worked all day as hard as he could. When I was about 13, it hit me that if I want my life to be different, football's going to be my way out. And so for me, football was never football was more than a game. I wouldn't have been able to say this, but football was my salvation. It gave me what I thought was love. It gave me significance, because as a kid growing up, I didn't know I had abandonment issues. I love my mom. I have forgiven my mom. But as I think back as a kid, a lot of my stuttering, I would chew on my fingers. I'd eat my nails down. I had all these tics that I didn't even know that they were, but I was dealing with abandonment issues. And so even now, there will be Sundays I'll pull up to Transformation Church and say, when are they going to find out? And they're going to leave too. And I have to really fight those thoughts and replace those negative thoughts with, no, I'm a beloved child of God. My value is intrinsic to who I am. And so working through that trauma, football gave me an outlet. Football gave me significance, and football taught me that I could actually get an education and leave. And so one of the reasons why I went to Brigham Young to play football, why in the world would an African-American kid from the hood go to BYU to play ball? It was as far away from Texas as I could go. Now that I look back, I was running from trauma. I was running from pain. But part of it also was, I thought, well, if I could be successful, then I could help my family be successful. But the problem is and I'm learning this more and more and more, I'm not responsible for someone else's happiness. I'm responsible to help, but I'm not responsible for them individually, internally, to be able to do that. And so I'm just now learning that, like as of yesterday.
Yeah, so much of what you say just resonates so
that
clearly.
Is so much in your new book.
I was like bouncing up and down in my chair when you were speaking. I was like, I need to meet this guy.
Tana just finished a new book for next year called The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child. And she can relate in just so many ways. So you went to BYU and excelled there, and then into the NFL. And where in this process was your conversion, if you will?
Yeah. So I met my to-be wife second semester my freshman year. So we've been together 30 years, about to celebrate 28 years. So we literally have known each other since we were teenagers. And my wife, like your wife, very accomplished, very strong, very intelligent. We just gelled. Like, she was going somewhere, I was going somewhere. But here's the problem, though. Wherever we go, we take us with us. And little did we know that both of us had so much stuff in our backpacks that we had to unpack. And so by my third year in the NFL, I was looking around saying, okay, the money I'm sending home to Texas is not fixing the problems, it's actually making it worse. Then I began it began to weigh on my heart that I told my wife's father, I'm going to love her and cherish her. And I found myself not knowing what love and cherishing was, because I didn't know how to love and cherish myself. I also lived with fear, not fear of football, but fear of who I would be without football. I would be the poor kid who stutters, who's ignored, who's forgotten about, and that traumatized me even more so. But then I recognized that there were things about me morally that I needed forgiveness for. No matter how much money I would donate to nonprofits or read to kids in school, I always had this guilt. And so I had a teammate, his name was Steve Grant, but his nickname was the Naked Preacher, because literally after practice, he'd take a shower, wrap a towel around his waist, and he'd get his Bible, and he would ask my teammates, "Oh, Jesus." And I had no church background. And in my mind, I'm like, what's up with the half-naked black man walking around with Jesus? And my teammate said, don't pay no attention to him. That's the naked preacher. And so I didn't want nothing to do with him, nothing to do with Jesus. I didn't want nothing to do with his Bible.
Oh, so great.
But over a 5-year process, I watched, number one, the way the other guys respected him in the locker room. Whenever anybody needed advice, they were talking to him. I watched how faithful he was to his wife, his children, the way he carried himself, the way he served the community. And so over 5 years, as my life was falling apart, I began to listen more to what he was saying. And so on August 2nd, 1997, in a small dorm room in Anderson, Indiana, in Anderson College, 5th year in the NFL, in a small dorm room, I called my wife on the phone. I said, I want to be more committed to you, and I want to be committed to Christ. And the only thing that I can say is I felt a physical change, and I literally cried for 3 days. I literally cried that for once in my life, someone loved me and they knew everything about me and they didn't leave me. I was like, I want to follow him. I want to love him back. And I haven't been the same since. I have fallen deeper and deeper in love with him, which has given me the capacity now to love me with all my flaws. And that's given me a capacity and a heart to love other people, because if God could meet me in my mess, then by his grace, I can meet other people in their mess, because we're all just a mess.
No doubt. And there's something about your story. There's seeing this big, tough guy, in your words, from the hood that has just been through it, who's an NFL player, just completely humbling himself. And that, I mean, for me, when I hear your story again now, just it brings tears to my eyes. There's just something about someone just being so humbled that makes them stronger, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's compelling. So I just love that.
And then you got out of the NFL, and what happened next?
1997 was my last year with the Colts. And then in 1998, I signed a contract with the Carolina Panthers here in Charlotte. And I never thought that I would live in the South. And after about 2 weeks here, I was like, this place is amazing. The weather's great and everything is new and the people are nice. I was like, man, this is great. So I played in 3 games with the Panthers and I tore my knee up.
Oh.
And I distinctly remember being on the field in Texas Stadium where the Cowboys used to play, looking up saying, okay, God, I'm mad. I'm not going to pray today, but I'm going to pray tomorrow. And from that injury, I got put on injured reserve, which meant I got my full salary, but I didn't have to play. All I did was rehab my knee and literally read the Bible. I made more money in that 1 year for a contract than any other time in my career, and I only played in 3 games, and I read the Bible. Now, that money was used to start Transformation Church. You don't know that then, but I know that now. And so what I thought was a disappointment was a divine appointment. What I thought was adversity became an opportunity. And the thing is, you don't know it then. Like Steve Jobs said, you only connect the dots when you look back. And so I remember being in the cold tub, just reading the Bible going, this is amazing. And so from that, I rehabbed my knee, got back in shape, and I looked at my wife and she looked at me and we're both like, we're done. And I called my agent and I said, I'm retiring. He goes, what? I said, yeah, I'm retiring. He goes, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. But I know God doesn't want me to play anymore. And my family thought I was crazy. My friends thought I was crazy. And then I got a phone call from the South Carolina Student Baptist Association to speak at a youth event. And before I went, I had a drag out argument with God, which just means I was complaining and he was smiling.
Right.
And I said, God, I'm a compulsive stutterer. Why would you want me to go and speak? You know the pain of stuttering. You know the fun I've been made of. You know this has been a disability in my life. I'll donate to it. Let's get a real professional to go. And I didn't hear a voice, but I sensed God say, if I can raise my son from the dead, I can raise your tongue to talk. Trust me. And so me, my wife, and at the time, Presley was probably 5. I went down there to this big old stadium and I basically shared who I was before Christ, how I met Christ, and what's happened after that. And when I was done, I said, does anybody want what happened to me to happen to them? And all these kids started standing up. And the next day, the phone just started to ring. And a year goes by and someone goes, yeah, you're in full-time ministry. You're an evangelist. And I said, wait, what? What are you talking about? And so that began the steps of developing an itinerant ministry. My wife organized everything. I'd go out and speak. And then about in 2005, that's when we both began to say, we want to plant a church that is centered on the love of Christ, that creates a multi-ethnic community that teaches the world this is what love looks like across ethnic lines, across social economic lines. We want to practice on earth what we're going to do for all eternity. And so that's what led to Planting Transformation Church. And I've got a couple of degrees and I'm a doctor, not quite like Dr. Amen, but I got a little doctor on my name now.
Love that. Congratulations.
So awesome.
When we come back, we are going to talk more about Transformation Church and how to live the good life. And Derwin, people can find your new book. They can pre-order your new book at where?
thegoodlifebook.net, thegoodlifebook.net. And they can get a free chapter. I'm giving away chapter 5 for free.
It's awesome. Stay with us.
Welcome back. We are still here with our friend, Pastor Derwin Gray. Welcome back, Derwin. I love your story. It's been several times I've heard it, but every time I hear it, I hear something new. And it's just so inspiring. And so thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
We want to talk about your new book.
Yeah, before we talk about our new book, I sense like God wants to tell me something through you. What is it about my story that connects with your story that encourages you?
First of all, the trauma, that's the obvious part, is that it's, so the original title of my book was One Less Scared Child. And everything you say just resonates so strongly. And I argued with God also. And I actually told Daniel the first time I had an opportunity to help, I said, nope, not doing it, not working with a bunch of drug addicts. I hate drugs and I hate drug addicts. And I said, God picked the wrong person. And he looked at me with this annoying smile that only husbands and psychiatrists, I think, have. And he said, God picked the perfect person. And it was really difficult to do. And I realized I had this epiphany. And I was standing on stage, still very angry when I was about to speak to these people. And I couldn't look at them as the people they were because of my anger. And I had this epiphany. And in that moment, God answered the prayer that I had spoken before I got on stage, because I prayed he would soften my heart. How am I going to help people I don't like? And so he softened my heart. And in that moment, I saw these scared children. They were just like me. They were not drug addicts. They weren't, criminals. They were just all scared children, just like I was growing up. They made different turns. They made different decisions. Somewhere along the line, it got messed up. But we all started off the same. And if I could help even one of them, there'd be one less scared child in the world. And when I hear your story, it reminds me of that. It reminds me of that scared child and overcoming. And you've just done so much to help so many people. It moves me.
Well,
and you're so humble about it. I wasn't that humble. I fought it.
Thank you for sharing that with me, because that's helpful for me. And one of the things that I love about God is that he doesn't waste any pain.
Nope.
He doesn't waste the pain. And like you said earlier, often in our pain, we find purpose. And what the enemy meant for evil, God turns into good. So for whoever is listening, your trauma just may be the trampoline that God uses to touch lives in ways that you can't even comprehend. Like if somebody would have told me I would be talking to you guys, I mean, Dr. Amen, like I pretty much have a bromance with him. Like I am a Dr. Amen fanboy. I'm a fan of yours too. If somebody would have said, "Lil Dewey from the hood would be talking to the scientific cutting edge of brain scanning imagery," I would say, I don't even know what that is, but God uses our trauma and to see what you're doing. And I know your next book is just going to be just epic, 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 epic. So thank you for sharing that with me. That blessed me.
Thank you.
So talk to us about your new book and why you wrote it and what people will get out of it.
Yeah. So way back in 2015, as a pastor, so I'm doing counseling, I'm helping people, I'm trying to serve them. And I'm noticing, regardless if they're a Christian or not, regardless of economic status or not, regardless of male or female, there's this theme of, I want to be happy, but I'm not. And they could be incredibly successful or frustrated, wherever it may be, teenagers, 70-year-olds, like there was this sense of, I'm not happy. And so I began to study the scriptures. And so when I got to the Beatitudes, Matthew chapter 5, verses 3 through 12, Jesus opens up the Sermon on the Mount with what's called the Beatitudes, and he uses the word blessed. And the word blessed in Greek literally is the word makarios, and it means happy. So Jesus says, happy are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Happy are those who lament or grieve, for they will become comforted. And so he describes 8 characteristics of a person who is happy. And these characteristics are exactly the characteristics of Jesus. And so the good news is God doesn't say, I want you to go fix your life. He's saying, I want to invite you into my life, into my story. Come as you are, but you won't stay the same. I'm going to make you happy. And so happiness is not contingent upon happenings. It's contingent upon this intimacy. Into me, you see this intimacy with Christ, in which he says, I'm going to mold you and I'm going to shape you, and you're going to be someone that looks like me and has a heart and a mind like me. And so it's very much a process. So if I could say it this way, the good life is not about good things happening to you. It's about good God. It's about a good God making you good. And so the happiness that we have transcends circumstances, and it gives us an internal, eternal happiness that fleshes itself out in the present. So the way a theologian would say it is this way: happiness and holiness are 2 sides of the same coin. And holiness means to become a whole human being. So that's what we're trying to invite people to experience.
And during this pandemic, I mean, I just love the Beatitudes, and so many people are suffering, where they've lost their jobs, they may lose their business, they've lost loved ones. My mom and dad actually ended up with COVID in the hospital in the same room.
88 and 90.
And, you know, my brain is going to the dark place, but I have the discipline to at least question my own thoughts. And the Orange County Register is now doing a story on them because they survived and they beat COVID, and now they can do the shopping for us, right? They're the warriors. But there's so much grief, loss, stress. How can the Beatitudes comfort people in this time?
Yeah, I'm going to zero in on Matthew 5:4. Happy are those who mourn, they will be comforted. If we don't grieve, we forfeit our growth.
Yes.
A lot of contemporary Christianity does not leave room for lament or grief. It's happy, 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 but it's the wrong kind of happiness. Sometimes happiness is reflected in God. I wish things were not the way that they are. I wish that all sad things would become untrue. But even in the midst of this, I know you grieve with me. I know you weep with me, because on the cross you experienced it, but you're comforting me because of the resurrection power that gives me a future hope, but it's a present reality that I can grieve that, man, I mean, I couldn't imagine my son or daughter's senior year of high school being wiped out, prom, sporting events. I mean, there is a lot to grieve. And I know as Americans, for the most part, we are first world people. We have a lot of comforts, but we still have to be honest about, man, this isn't what I thought it would be. And God is okay with that. And so our happiness is not this always a static, I'm running around. It's a happiness that is rooted in this confidence in God. I like to call it Godfidence. That even in the midst of grieving, there's a supernatural healing that takes place because we have solidarity with God. We have a God literally who grieves and suffers with us, but we have a God who gives us strength in the midst of it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I really sense that during this, not just in America, but worldwide, I feel like it's like we've built our lives on sandcastles, and this wave called COVID just came in and it just wiped it out. And we're uncertain. I mean, the great American economy has been brought to its knees by a virus that's smaller than a grain of sand. 7 million people, jobless claims. We've seen over 10,000 people pass away. That's just in America. And so there's this sense of our equilibrium is off, but I think our listening is on. And I think it's a time for people to press the reset and to seek Jesus afresh, because sometimes Jesus is presented as a political leader of a political party. Sometimes he's presented as a genie in a bottle. And I think Jesus wants to meet us on his own terms. And so my doctoral work is in what's called first century Second Temple Jewish context. And what I try to do is bring people on a journey. Let's talk to Jesus on his own terms where he is, and you'll discover he is more gracious, he is more beautiful, he is more life-giving than you think, and Jesus will jack up your life plan.
Yes.
If somebody would have told me I would be a pastor, are you kidding me? If somebody would have, guys, the first wedding I went to was my own. No one in my family got married.
Yeah.
So Jesus will jack up your plans, but it'll make our dreams look like mud pies compared to the difference he wants to make in people's lives. Now, listen, not everybody's going to be a power couple like you guys. Not everybody's going to lead a giant church, but everybody is a somebody that Jesus wants to use to influence someone's life. And so the good life is about experiencing life on Jesus's terms afresh, with his grace, his strength. And the weaker we are, the stronger he is in us.
Yeah, need him now more than ever. When we come back, we're going to talk about more practical steps to lead the good life. And you want to say something?
Well, when you asked me something in the beginning about what about your story resonated, there was one other thing that is so pertinent to what you're talking about now. And that is, you said that, when you talked about your stuttering, when you were being called to speak, and you said, but God, why are you picking me? I stutter, and I have all of these in your mind. You're going through the reasons why you shouldn't be doing it. And I experienced that very, very same thing. There were so many times that there was a point in my story where I wished that a truck would hit me. I literally was so depressed I couldn't get out of bed. My life had just gone so far off the rails, and I wanted to die. And I thought, if there is a God, he doesn't love me, so forget it. Like, forget God. And I was just so despondent. But there's no way I could have known that what I was going through then was going to shape who I am now, like the strength and the my ability to speak and writing books and helping people, I had to go through that grief to get the insight and the empathy and the strength to do what I do now. And there's no way I could have seen that. Like you said, it's 2020. And it's so important for people right now going through this process, this grieving, that they are able to have someone that's gone through this that they can watch and go, wait, they've been through a lot. And what they've been through is now why they're where they're at.
And it's post-traumatic growth, which is, I believe, there's going to be huge post-pandemic growth.
Right.
And if we pay attention to the pain and what we can learn and not get consumed with ourselves, but look outward to help other people, then your level of stress will go down and your happiness will go up. Stay with us. We're here with Pastor Derwin Gray. You can get a free chapter of his new book, The Good Life, if you go to thegoodlifebook.net. Stay with us.
I will embrace my many strengths.
I will not be tormented by my past.
I will find the right balance.
I will be calm and courageous.
I will be free. I am not just bipolar.
I am not just autism.
I'm not just depression.
I'm not just ADD.
I am not just anxiety.
I am not just OCD.
I am not just PTSD.
Welcome back. We are here with our friend, Dr. Derwin Gray, pastor of Transformation Church in Charlotte. Is it in North Carolina or South Carolina?
So technically our facility is in what's called Indian Land, South Carolina, but it's basically Charlotte because Charlotte's just continuing to grow and spread. And so we are very much a regional church and now becoming a national and international church.
Well, congratulations. And your story is just so important. And during this time of the pandemic, what are you hearing from your parishioners that really is touching your soul?
Yeah, probably one of the most touching stories I've heard thus far is we have a woman that's a part of our community. She is 79, and she wrote me a note and said, Pastor, I send in about $25 every 2 weeks as a part of my offering. And she goes, I just got a check for $200 and I'm going to give half of it to Transformation Church because I want to see more people come to know Christ. And I thought to myself, in the midst of our economy, in the midst of what's happening, and at her age to continuously, generously give to the mission of Transformation Church, that lets me know that her trust is not in the economy, but it's in Christ, that she's generous because of the generosity of Jesus. So our church has received large checks by number, but maybe never one as large by intent of the heart. And so we are seeing people serve. We're seeing people do the best that they can. It's really, really been encouraging to watch our people grow in solidarity. This has actually brought us closer.
So important. Let's get back to the good life. And what are some of the major takeaways you want people to do with this book? How do you want it to impact them? And what are some practical things that they'll get in the book?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing they're going to get in the book is they're going to be surprised at how the quality of their life and relationships is transformed. I think they're going to discover aspects and elements of their lives that they didn't even know that were possible. I think they will discover a hunger and thirst to love people like they've never had before, because they're going to encounter the depths of God's love. One of the chapters is called Happy Are the Peacemakers. And boy, can we use peacemakers in this time in the United States of America. Our happiness flows out of the quality of our relationships. And so if you hate another person, if you have grudges against another person, that's an anchor in your soul. And so when we learn to forgive, when we learn to receive God's love, the person who gets healed the most is not the person you forgive, it's you, the forgiver. And so there's a lot of coach in me, and coaches love to see their players maximize their potential. And so what I think people are going to get out of this book is they're going to truly become themselves. And the practicality and the practical steps of the disciplines that I have people walk through, the prayer guide I have them walk through, there's even a Bible study that people can do. Like, I really see this and sense that could there ever be a better time to launch a book than in a global pandemic about the good life and finding happiness? I believe in marketing, but my marketing strategy is not that good to shut the world down. So people
needed now more than ever.
It's so true. We so need these positive messages to focus on, and something purposeful. And we're hearing from a lot of people that follow our work and follow our podcast that this is actually the best time in their lives. So obviously, calls on the suicide hotlines are up 800%, but there are a lot of people who feel like it's one of the best times in their life because the pause button got hit. Life isn't so fast. They have time with their families. We're hearing those stories as well, but you also need something to focus your attention on, to challenge those negative thoughts, something bigger than yourself. One of the questions we've taught our kids in this house, because we've got 2 teenagers and a 10-year-old here right now, and that can be challenging during this.
I'm going to pray for y'all.
Yeah, exactly.
You can call me for counseling anytime.
And they're all girls. So the sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. And one thing that we have been working on with them, and especially the 10-year-old, I really helped her with, they freak out, they're emotional over something that happens. And I stop and I'm like, we have a question in this house. Does it have eternal value? If it doesn't have eternal value, if I'm not going to remember it 5 days from now, 5 years from now, I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's we might react in the moment and then let it go because it does not have eternal value. There's way bigger fish to fry right now, right? We need to be focusing on what has eternal value, turning that pain into purpose, using what our God-given gifts to help others.
Yeah.
Now, look, you have an ABC model. Can you talk about that?
Well, as far as an ABC model, kind of what I've tried to do is talk about our head, our hearts, and our hands. Typically as people, we tend to flow into, well, we're all head, or, oh, we're just all emotions, or we're just serving. And so I think that to be a unified person, we want our minds filled with truth and love and beauty that helps our hearts. And let me pause here. When I say helps our heart, helps us to move beyond our past pains and traumas and to begin to love ourselves correctly. One of the things that I'm seeing is a lot of people will go, okay, well, I get love God and I get love my neighbor, but what does it mean to love myself? And I find that there's a lot of people who don't like themselves, let alone love themselves, because they base their self-worth on accomplishments. And as you guys know, and as I know, there's never enough accomplishment to satisfy the human heart. And so what I like to say, if Jesus is not enough to satisfy your heart, nothing will ever be enough. So a part of loving yourself correctly through the good life is coming in contact with a father, God the Father saying, you are my beloved. You are precious to me. You are valuable to me, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. But more importantly, God the Father loves us the same way he loves Jesus, because a supernatural miracle takes place. And when we say yes to Jesus as our forgiver, our lives become interwoven into his. And all of a sudden, what's true of him is true of me. And I have found a lot of people, and I know you guys have as well, who struggle with loving themselves. And because of Dr. Amon's work, I'm able now to help people to say, listen, if you are struggling with depression, if you're struggling with anxiety, you're going to be lent towards these negative feelings about yourself. And so not only do you need the word of God and prayer, but you also need to see a specialist. We have a mental health or a brain health. I don't say mental health anymore because I learned from someone we should say brain health. So I say brain health now. Matter of fact, somebody should write a book on that. So
that would be a great idea. I think that'd be, we'll just call it the end of mental illness. And
I like it. And so we have a brain health ministry here at Transformation Church. And a lot of it is teaching people how to love yourself correctly. That doesn't lead to arrogance. It leads to profound humility, and it leads to treasuring yourself because God treasures you. You can tell a lot about a person by the way they treat other people.
Right. And the underlying thought, the foundational thought to low self-esteem is I am not enough. I'm not pretty enough, rich enough, smart enough, tall enough, skinny enough, whatever it is, it's I'm not enough, which is only perpetuated in this era of social media.
Yeah, it made me wonder about one thing you said as well in the beatitudes. Happy or blessed are those who mourn, and it made me wonder about something because you've been through a lot. I've been through a lot. A lot of our people listening have been through a lot. It's why they find us, right? So they've been through a lot. They've been through trauma. They've been through grief, and they're certainly going through it now. And I started wondering during this time. I've had more time to read my Bible, to pray, to reflect than I normally have. And I've actually wondered something. Is the reason that this time is peaceful for some people, and the reason that some of us actually, like you turned your pain into purpose, I feel like I've been able to turn my pain into purpose. But I wonder, as looking back at those times that were so difficult, that were so hard, that we thought, for me, I'd rather not be alive. Is it because, at least in my mind, I realized I had the unfortunate but fortunate opportunity to realize that my entire life was built on a house of cards. So everything that I thought was important was ripped away from me in literally one sentence: you have cancer. And that one sentence destroyed everything that I thought was important. So everything had been built on accomplishment. It had been built on physical appearance. It had been built on these things that can be taken in just like that, just like a pandemic can do, right? So that is traumatic, but when you learn that lesson, don't build your house on that again. Don't rebuild on that house of cards. You're stronger the next time around.
Yeah, we have to go to the next podcast, but in it, I want to talk more about The Good Life. You can get, you can pre-order the book at thegoodlifebook.net, get chapter 5 for free. You will just love Pastor Gray's teaching. They come from the heart, but they're so practical. And you can also learn more about his church. Is it transformationchurch.com?
.tc. Transformationchurch.tc. Yep.
Great. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. We're just having this great conversation with our friend, Pastor Derwin Gray, former NFL player, has written a number of books, has a new book, The Good Life, coming out June 2nd. We just feel like he's ministering to us, and we're grateful to share it with you. I was thinking during the last episode about Maslow's hierarchy of needs in a pandemic, that, the first need is safety, and it's food and shelter. And so many people are feeling the foundation of their psychological security threatened. But they don't know that the time Maslow was writing his hierarchy of needs, that Viktor Frankl was working on something called logos therapy, which is basically meaning and purpose. And Viktor Frankl ended up in a Nazi concentration camp, and he found that even when people did not have their basic security needs met, it wasn't safe, they didn't have food, they didn't have clothing, that if they had purpose, if there was some deep meaning in their life that typically involved other people, that they were more likely to survive and thrive than the people who had lost meaning.
Purposeful people live an average of 11 years longer anyways.
How do you see that, Derwin, play out in your ministry?
Yeah, this reminds me of Matthew chapter 6, verses 21 through 34, when Jesus is saying, look at the birds of the air, the lilies of the field, God provides for them. Life is more than just food, water, and clothing. And yes, food is important, water is important, clothing is important, but I think there's a double beautiful meaning in that, because in verse 33, Jesus says, but seek first the kingdom of God and all his righteousness, and these things will be added to you. So think about this. Life, food, water, clothes. Jesus is the bread of life. He's the living water, and he will clothe you in your robes of righteousness. So Jesus himself is the one who meets the need so that we can participate in his purpose. And I do agree with Dr. Frankl and that there's something about purpose. And when you have purpose, it's like gravity. It pulls you back. It pulls you through. Gravity, as you guys know, when you jump, you come back. So purpose in the midst of whatever circumstance is going on brings you back. What greater purpose could there be than this? Love God and love your neighbor as you love yourself. And the beautiful thing about that purpose that Jesus communicated is that can happen anytime, anywhere, through any type of context. And so what we do is we build our lives on achieving, accomplishment, and this and that. And that's why in my realm of the NFL, when a lot of guys get done playing, they feel like their purpose is done because they thought their purpose was to play football. No, that's what you do. That's not your purpose. Purpose is bigger than simply doing something to get a paycheck or win a ring. The purpose is, how do I leverage my life so that others can love God, so that I can love my neighbor as I love myself. Purpose is, how do I make someone else's life better as a result of mine? And
during this really hard time, loneliness is a monster issue. And many people don't know that loneliness is actually a risk factor for dementia. It's a risk factor for depression. It's a risk factor for suicide. I think the church can play a huge role. And I'm friends with Pastor Miles McPherson, who's the senior pastor and founder of The Rock, also another NFL player. And he said they're just busier now than they've been. And you had told us that online attendance has gone up 400%, which totally makes sense. But so 2 questions. How can the church better serve people during the pandemic? Because this isn't just going away. And how can people lean into their churches to get the support they need?
And and how can some of us lean in better to give more support?
Yeah, totally. So the first thing that I would say is not only has our online viewership grown, but our online small groups have grown. Like our Zoom small groups are exploding.
Wow.
People want to connect. And then a lot of times, so think about this. To go to a small group at someone's house, you got to get in the car. So let's say you're a mom and you've worked, you're single and you got kids, and then, so I want to go to a small group.
No. It's my reason for not getting involved in a regular Bible study has been because it's so difficult to get the homework, the food, all these things together. And it's on my to-do list and I can't seem to get to it.
And so what we found, and this was even before the pandemic, is that people are willing to have community like this. Now, it's not the full thing, but it's something, and there are ways to enhance that. But even before the pandemic, community was very important to us. Like, the church is not a weekend rock show with a guy or girl who speaks well. The church is a family that's 24, and so we want to be that type of community. But it's also important. It's also important that people trust God and learn how to build relationships and community. But our Zoom groups are just flourishing and growing.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
We're going to have to stop in just a minute. But if you had one word of encouragement for the people listening, what might that be? And again, they can find out about the new book at thegoodlifebook.net. And I just encourage, and they can also attend services online at transformationchurch.tc.
Correct. Yep. We do live stream every Sunday. We've got YouTube, Roku, Apple channel, Facebook. You can find us for sure. And we would love to have you view. Doc, what I would say is this by way of illustration. All of us are taking, quote unquote, a test. Let's just call it the ACT test. And we have to score perfect to enter into the life experience that we want. Well, all of us take the test and we all fail miserably. We feel like we're not enough. We feel like we're unworthy. We feel like it's over. But Jesus comes to take the test for us. He lives a sinless, perfect life because we couldn't. He dies for us on the cross for our sins, and he raises again so that we actually can share his life. And from all eternity, Jesus is our enough. That it's true, I'm not enough, but Jesus is my enough, so it's okay. And the more I think about him being enough, the more I'm changed. So when I get off of when I occupy my mind with him being enough for me, instead of me not being enough, it's amazing how my life flourishes, how I experience the good life and happiness, that I can say, you know what, I'm not enough, but Jesus is my enough. And the more I see that he's my enough, the healthier I become.
Well,
I agree.
Thank you so much, my friend. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yes. Love you guys. You guys are awesome. And I appreciate your years of counsel and just your friendship. And Tani, I look forward to getting your new book. I want an autographed copy.
Well, I would love to have you read it and tell me what you think, if you don't mind.
I would love to do that. I would love to.
And I just have to tell you, I'm so glad you didn't listen to the nonsense about how you should not be up speaking, because you are an amazing speaker. You are compelling and you are motivating.
Thank you.
And I think you and I are talking on Friday.
Yes,
We're talking on something for the church. So I'll see you then. I'll look forward to it.
If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're considering coming to Amen Clinics or trying some of the brain healthy supplements from BrainMD, you can use the code podcast10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com or a 10% discount on all supplements at brainmdhealth.com. For more information, give us a call at 855-978-1363.